Stop thinking of Lucille Ball as the dizzy, accident-prone clown who stuffed chocolates in her mouth. That woman, Lucie Ricardo, was perhaps the greatest, most elaborate performance of the 20th century. The real woman, Lucille Ball, she was a ruthless corporate titan, a formidable executive, and a survivor of crippling poverty who was, paradoxically, told she had absolutely no talent. She didn't just star in the greatest sitcom of all time. She didn't just break the glass ceiling. She bought the entire building, making her the first female Hollywood mogul. But behind the impeccable smile and the towering $17 million empire, her life was a spectacular tragedy built on infidelity, alcoholism, and a stunning secret about her own death. This is what really happened to Lucille Ball, the story you were never supposed to know. The starlet who couldn't catch a break. Before she became the queen of comedy, Lucille Ball was simply the embodiment of Hollywood failure. Her career began in 1929 when she landed modeling work, soon moving to Broadway using the stage name Diane Belmont. However, her initial attempts at stardom were marked by relentless rejection and severe humiliation. She was fired from 4 different shows during her time as a Broadway chorus girl, and was repeatedly told by industry professionals, including acting coaches, that she should give up because she fundamentally lacked talent. This period was compounded by both financial destitution and hidden physical suffering. While striving to succeed in New York City, Ball endured profound economic hardship. Biographical accounts describe her desperation, including an infamous anecdote where she subsisted by concocting tomato soup from watered-down ketchup and scavenging uneaten donuts left by departed diners. For a period of 2 to 3 years, she was incapacitated by debilitating rheumatoid arthritis, a struggle she chose to keep secret for most of her life. Upon arriving in Hollywood, her career didn't instantly ascend to A-list status. Throughout the 1930s and 1940s, Ball was cast primarily as a contract player for studios like RKO, appearing in over 70 films. She gained the notorious nickname Queen of the B's because her primary roles were limited to B pictures, often cast as a flapper girl, a glamour girl, or some type. Ball later reflected on this phase, saying, "The studio system was very limiting, and I was really stuck." This relentless cycle of rejection and being typecast played a critical role in shaping Lucille Ball's future. Failing to break through as a dramatic A-list actress meant she never developed a deep loyalty to the major film studios of the time, RKO, Columbia, or MGM, the very companies that would one day become direct competitors of Desilu. Instead of clinging to a system that had never truly supported her, she learned to question its value altogether. Those early disappointments planted the seeds of a new mindset, one rooted in independence, skepticism, and control. As she once put it, she discovered early on that there were a lot of people you can learn nothing from except to stay the hell away from them. That harsh lesson didn't just shape her attitude, it became her strategy. The frustration and failure of her film years became fuel for something far more revolutionary. When she finally found her place in television, she brought with her a radical philosophy. Real creative freedom could only come through ownership. And unlike the studios that once boxed her in, she was now building something she could control entirely. The red hair was a glorious mistake. If Lucille Ball learned anything from being underestimated, it was how to take control of the parts of her image that could be shaped and then turn them into power. One of the most famous symbols of that transformation is her bright, flaming red hair. Today, it's impossible to separate Lucille Ball from that vibrant color. It's one of the most iconic and instantly recognizable looks in entertainment history. But what most people don't know is that her signature red was never natural. It wasn't even the result of a carefully thought-out style decision. It was an accident, one born of science, chemistry, and a little bit of panic. Ball was naturally a brunette. Early in her career in New York, She dyed her hair platinum blonde and briefly went by the name Diane Belmont, trying on different identities in a desperate attempt to stand out. But it wasn't until she moved to Hollywood and landed a role in MGM's Do Barry Was a Lady, 1943, that the transformation into Lucille Ball, the redhead, began. The studio assigned legendary hairstylist Sidney Galaroff to give her a bold, Technicolor-ready makeover. He tried an experimental dye formula that, according to reports, initially turned her hair green. After scrambling to fix it, they landed on the now famous shade of coppery red that would define her image forever. But this wasn't just a lucky break. It was a masterclass in how Lucille Ball approached her career. She understood the power of presentation. That hair was more than just color. It was branding. It popped on screen. It made her unforgettable. And it was consistent, controlled, and intentional from that point forward. This accidental innovation also foreshadowed the meticulous attention to technical detail she'd later apply as the head of Desilu. For example, she insisted her shows be filmed on high-quality 35mm rather than cheaper tape, not just for clarity, but because she already saw the future: syndication. Better film meant longer shelf life, more control, more profit. Beyond being a performer, Lucille Ball was a strategist. She turned a hair dye mishap into a media trademark. She used technical advantages as leverage. And, like everything else in her career, she turned what others might have dismissed as superficial into something deeply, deliberately powerful. From red hair to redefining television, Lucille Ball didn't just change how she looked, she changed how television worked. And the most important move of her entire career began with a crisis. The creation of I Love Lucie, the show that would make her a legend, was born out of personal fear, industry resistance, and a bold refusal to accept the status quo. When CBS approached Ball about turning her successful radio comedy My Favorite Husband into a television series, they assumed it would be a simple copy-paste job. Same story, same jokes, new medium. But Ball had one firm, non-negotiable condition. Her real-life husband, Cuban-American bandleader Desi Arnaz, had to play her on-screen husband too. CBS said no. Network executives were nervous. They believed that 1950s audiences wouldn't accept a white American woman married to a Cuban man with a thick accent, not even in fiction. Their refusal wasn't just about casting. It revealed the deep racial and cultural prejudices baked into early American television. At the time, nearly every face on TV was white, English-speaking, and comfortably conventional. Rather than back down, Ball and Arnaz went on the offensive. They personally financed a live vaudeville-style tour to showcase their chemistry, comedy, and star power as a real-life couple. They called the act Desilu, a blend of their names. The tour was a hit. Crowds loved them. And most importantly, CBS couldn't deny the proof. Audiences didn't just accept Desi Arnaz, they adored him. This was more than a casting victory. It was a cultural breakthrough. Ball had used her rising fame to break the industry's rigid rules, proving that mixed ethnicity couples could lead a mainstream show, and more than just winning the argument. She redefined the template for husband and wife comedy teams on TV. But the stakes were also painfully personal. Ball's insistence on casting Arnaz was more about survival than representation. Their marriage was under strain, rocked by Desi's frequent infidelity. She believed that working together might save their relationship. In doing so, she bound their personal and professional lives together in a way that no Hollywood couple had done before. The fusion of love, fame, and business between Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz led to the creation of one of the most revolutionary companies in television history, Desilu Productions. While I Love Lucie is remembered for its groundbreaking comedy, the show's most revolutionary aspect was the financial and technical architecture designed primarily by Desi Arnaz, which Ball supported. This partnership transformed ephemeral live broadcasts into perpetual, profitable assets, fundamentally creating the model for television residuals and syndication we know today. Traditionally, early television was broadcast live from New York, often captured on primitive kinescope, resulting in poor quality for later broadcast or reruns. Arnaz and Ball were determined to produce a high-quality product in Hollywood, pioneering the use of the three-camera setup and insisting on filming everything on expensive, high-quality 35mm film. The three-camera system, which allowed for instantaneous transitions between wide shots, medium shots, and close-ups, revolutionized how sitcoms were shot in front of a live studio audience. However, the high cost associated with using 35mm film meant the production budget significantly exceeded what the network, CBS, was willing to pay. So Ball and Arnaz made a daring offer through Desilu Productions. They would pay the extra cost themselves in exchange for full ownership of the filmed episodes. It seemed like a minor production detail at the time, but it turned out to be a seismic shift in entertainment history. By retaining ownership of the master copies, Desilu secured the rights to future syndication. When the show ended its initial run and entered perpetual reruns, Desilu earned massive, continuous profits, unlike most stars of the time who only received flat fees. This decision proved that Ball possessed a financial acumen far sharper than her dizzy persona suggested. Her success was rooted in prioritizing long-term ownership over short-term salary, creating the foundational wealth necessary for Desilu to expand, purchase RKO Studios, and eventually become a dominant industry player. While Desilu was booming and I Love Lucie kept millions laughing, things were very different behind the scenes. The Ricardos, America's favorite couple, were a carefully crafted illusion, one that masked the unraveling marriage of Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz. As their fame soared, so did the personal tensions that fame couldn't fix. What the audience saw was Lucie and Ricky. What they didn't see was a relationship strained by infidelity, addiction, and the demands of empire building. When the cameras stopped rolling, the hidden life of Lucie and Ricky Ricardo. The Ricardos, Lucie and Ricky, seemed like the perfect post-war American couple. Fiery, funny, but deeply in love. But the perfect on-screen harmony masked a fractured, real-life marriage plagued by persistent personal vices. Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz met on the set of Too Many Girls in 1940 and eloped later that year. Their romance was passionate, but also rocky from the start. Just 4 years in, Ball filed for divorce due to Arnaz's repeated infidelity. They later reconciled, hoping that working together on television would bring them closer. Instead, pressures of success only made things worse. As Desilu Productions grew into a major force in the industry, Arnaz, who managed the business side, was pushed to his limit. Balancing his executive duties with his role on I Love Lucie drained him, and he began drinking more heavily. Tensions flared, often spilling over into loud, sometimes violent arguments on set. The contrast between the cheerful Ricardos on screen and the unhappy Arnazes off-screen became painfully clear. Eventually, keeping up the illusion became too much. In 1960, Ball filed for divorce again, this time for good, ending their 20-year marriage. In a bittersweet twist, the very company Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz built to strengthen their marriage ultimately played a role in ending it. Yet, even after the divorce, the two remained close, and from the end of their personal partnership came one of the most significant turning points in Ball's professional life. In 1962, overwhelmed by the stress of running Desilu, Arnaz asked Ball to buy out his share of the company. For Ball, taking over wasn't part of some long-term career plan. It was an urgent, necessary decision, a kind of professional triage. She agreed, purchasing his shares for $2.5 million. Overnight, she became the sole owner and chief executive officer of Desilu Productions, making her the first woman in Hollywood history to run a major studio. This historic moment was not without challenges. When Lucille Ball took control of Desilu in 1962, the studio was struggling. Revenues were down, and the television industry was rapidly changing. Major movie studios were beginning to produce their own TV content, which pushed independent companies like Desilu to the margins. The business environment was becoming more competitive, and Ball had inherited a company in serious need of direction. She also knew she wasn't fully prepared for the job. Ball openly admitted she had never planned to become a full-time executive, saying she was prepared neither to be a full-time businesswoman nor to rule a whole company. Her decision to take over wasn't driven by ambition. It was about survival. She wanted to protect her career, her creative freedom, and the unique production system she and Arnaz had worked so hard to build. Her early years in B-movies, where she had little control and even less respect, had left her determined never to be dependent on the Hollywood studio system again. But Ball didn't try to go it alone. One of her first major acts as head of Desilu was hiring someone who could do what she couldn't: manage the day-to-day operations. She brought in Oscar Katz, a respected CBS executive, to serve as executive vice president. It was a smart, strategic move that reflected her self-awareness and leadership instincts. The scatterbrained Ricardo might have bungled a budget, but Lucille Ball, the executive, knew when to bring in real help. Her $2.5 million buyout of Arnaz was a turning point that gave her independence, control, and a chance to reshape her future. The $17 million gamble and the price of being Lucie. Lucille Ball's true genius as an executive was demonstrated not in producing more sitcoms, but in making audacious, genre-defying bets that secured Desilu's profitability and cemented its long-term cultural influence. When she took over, Ball inherited an empire built on comedy. She saved it by embracing science fiction and espionage. During her tenure as sole CEO, Ball's studio greenlit two of the most enduring non-comedic franchises in the history of television: Star Trek, 1966, and Mission: Impossible, 1966. These were highly risky, expensive ventures that diversified Desilu's portfolio far beyond the Lucie vehicle it was perceived to be. Her decision to back these pilots, particularly the high-concept, serialized narrative of Star Trek, proved her remarkable business intuition and her willingness to invest in groundbreaking intellectual property, IP. Her managerial success was measurable and rapid. By 1968, Ball had successfully navigated the market challenges, stabilizing the company and steering Desilu back to significant profitability. This financial recovery positioned her perfectly for a strategic exit. In 1968, Ball sold her entire interest in Desilu Productions to Gulf Plus Western Industries, which was the parent company of Paramount Pictures, for a staggering $17 million. To understand the scale of this transaction, $17 million in 1968 is equivalent to approximately $160 million in today's currency. This sale was the ultimate validation of her status as an executive. The entire sequence, divorce, reluctant CEO, successful turnaround, and high-value sale, shows that the core of her power lay not in her performance, but in her foresight regarding content ownership and brand diversification. The foundational capital provided by I Love Lucie reruns enabled the subsequent IP expansion. Decades later, the profits generated by just one of her greenlights, Star Trek, continued to justify her executive acumen. The sale marked the end of the Desilu story, transitioning the company into the television production arm of Paramount Pictures and cementing Lucille Ball's legacy as one of the most powerful and strategic businesswomen in 20th century media. Ironically, despite her groundbreaking success behind the scenes, Ball spent the latter half of her career grappling with the persona that had made her a household name. The public's deep affection for Lucie Ricardo became both a triumph and a trap, an indelible brand that ultimately limited her ability to grow as an actress and redefine herself in the public eye. After the dissolution of Desilu, Ball starred in two subsequent highly successful, long-running sitcoms: The Lucie Show, 1962-1968, and Here's Lucie, 1968-1974. These shows maintained the familiar comedic formula, the scatterbrained, scheme-prone protagonist matched with her longtime foil, Gail Gordon. While this guaranteed ratings, it locked Ball into a perpetual cycle of slapstick. Lucille Ball's commitment to playing the lovable clown came at a personal cost. Behind the joyful, silly character of Lucie Ricardo was a serious, driven woman who worked tirelessly to keep her career and her company alive. The gap between her public image and her private self was wide and often difficult to manage. Some who knew her at the time described a much tougher side of Ball. One contemporary critic even called her a monster of staggering charmlessness and monumental lack of humor, claiming she lived only for her weekly show and was constantly obsessed with ratings. While harsh, this view showed just how much effort it took for Ball to maintain the image of happy, carefree Lucie. In reality, she was a strong, often demanding businesswoman who carried the heavy burden of being both a star and a studio head. As she aged, Ball attempted twice to break free from the mold. In 1985, she took on a serious, dramatic role in the CBS television film Stone Pillow, portraying a homeless woman. While this pivot demonstrated her desire to escape the confines of comedy, it was her subsequent return to the sitcom format that proved devastating. In 1986, she starred in Life with Lucie. The show was a crushing critical and commercial failure, canceled by ABC after only 3 months. The failure of Life with Lucie was a brutal public rejection, demonstrating the ultimate power of syndication. Audiences preferred the perfectly preserved classic Lucie Ricardo of the 1950s over the updated 1980s version. She was trapped by her own successful creation, unable to transition into new creative territory because the brand was too strong. The final bow and the medical shock. Lucille Ball's life ended with a dramatic and deeply ironic twist. A joyful public farewell followed just weeks later by a sudden, tragic medical crisis that no one saw coming. After more than 60 years in show business, Ball appeared ready to step away from the spotlight with grace. Her final public appearance came at the 1989 Academy Awards, where she walked on stage alongside her longtime friend and comedy partner, Bob Hope. The moment was unforgettable. As soon as the audience saw her, they rose to their feet in a spontaneous, emotional standing ovation. It was a powerful, unscripted tribute from the entire entertainment industry, a moment that felt like a fitting send-off for a true icon. But just 1 month later, on April 18, 1989, Ball was rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles after experiencing chest pain. Doctors discovered she had a dissecting aortic aneurysm, a serious condition in which the wall of the artery near the heart tears and begins to split apart. She underwent a grueling 7-hour open-heart surgery to repair the damage and replace a valve. The surgery was considered a success. In the days that followed, Ball showed signs of recovery. She was awake, eating, even walking, a hopeful sign for both her doctors and her family. Then, without warning, everything changed. Exactly 1 week later, on the morning of April 26, 1989, Ball woke up in pain. She complained of severe back pain, then quickly lost consciousness. She died shortly after, at the age of 77. The cause of death was a ruptured abdominal aortic aneurysm, a completely separate and unexpected event from the heart surgery she had just survived. Hospital officials confirmed that the repaired area of her heart was intact. This was a secondary rupture, and it came without warning. The way she died brought a haunting kind of symbolism. Lucille Ball had spent her life mastering the art of physical comedy, wild facial expressions, chaotic stunts, grape stomping, and pie fights. Her comedy was loud, external, and full of energy, but ultimately safe and controlled. In contrast, her death came silently from within, caused by something invisible and unstoppable. She survived the first major health scare, only to be taken by something no one could predict. In the end, Ball's passing mirrored the dramatic, emotional highs and lows of her life. She left the stage to the sound of a standing ovation, only to exit life itself in a sudden, devastating way. Lucille Ball's true historical importance transcends her comedic brilliance. Her enduring legacy lies in the institutional and cultural barriers she destroyed, proving that her powerful business mind continues to shape modern entertainment decades after her death. Ball and Desi Arnaz pioneered fundamental changes in television production that are still standard today. The Desilu innovation of the multi-camera setup and filming on 35mm film fundamentally standardized the sitcom format and, more importantly, enabled high-quality content that could be sold indefinitely worldwide through global syndication. This technical decision made television content a long-term asset, ensuring perpetual profitability. Culturally, her influence was equally seismic. Her non-negotiable insistence on casting Desi Arnaz broke significant ethnic barriers on early television, establishing a template for diverse and complicated on-screen family dynamics. Ball championed female friendships on screen, famously partnering with Vivian Vance, Ethel Mertz. Sociological analysis suggests that the deep, complicated friendship between Lucie and Ethel established a model for countless future female comedic duos, paving the way for shows like Laverne and Shirley, and even Sex and the City. Beyond the screen, Ball's time as the first female studio head in Hollywood broke the corporate glass ceiling for women executives in the film and television industry. Her impact extended into personal advocacy as well. She stood up for gay rights in interviews and enforced anti-segregation policies in her New York penthouse, insisting that Black people use the front elevator rather than the service elevator. The most profound realization of her executive legacy, however, is the continued financial success of the IP she greenlit. The single high-risk decision to back Star Trek in 1966 provided Paramount with one of its most profitable, multi-generational franchises, a stream of revenue that continues today. The comedic legend, who started as the Queen of the Bees, achieved true immortality not just by making the world laugh, but by strategically building a self-sustaining financial machine and creating transformative IP that continues to define global science fiction and modern corporate structure. Lucille Ball's story is not a simple biography of a funny woman. It is an epic narrative about calculated ambition, hidden struggle, and profound risk-taking in the face of constant institutional doubt. She was told she had no talent, yet she became the world's most recognized comedian. She was locked into the studio system's restrictive roles, so she built her own studio. She was married to a man whose personal vices threatened to destroy her career, so she created a show to save him, which ultimately created the wealth that enabled her to buy him out. She spent 2 decades meticulously playing the scatterbrained wife, simply to mask the fact she was running a major corporation that was literally building the future of television with shows like Star Trek and Mission Impossible. The final irony is devastating. The woman who could survive a pie in the face, a collapsing wall, or a grape-stomping fight on screen was ultimately felled by a silent, invisible internal rupture. Her true gift was not comedic timing, but the sheer indefatigable will to survive and dominate a world that had repeatedly told her she didn't belong. Her legacy is one of self-made authority, achieved through a strategic performance of imperfection. Which of Lucille Ball's untold truths surprised you the most? The hidden health crisis, the accidental red hair, or the $17 million gamble on sci-fi? Let us know in the comments below. If you're curious about the real stories behind Hollywood legends, those who were far more complex than their on-screen personas, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a deep dive. See you in our next video. Thanks for watching.